Hello everybody, welcome back to the Farming Simulator 22 how-to video. Today we're going to close out our three-part series in the Pumps and Hoses how-to series with a video related to the hoses, hose reels, pumps, and injectors. But before that, this video is brought to you by Corpnut and Dranger Overlander. Thank you for being farm barons. So we're going to separate this video up into three distinct parts. The first part, we're going to focus on the hoses and the hose reels and working with the hoses on the hose reels. Also, information about connecting and disconnecting the hoses. Part 2, we're going to focus on the pumps that are part of the Pumps and Hoses DLC, like this air compressor, or this water pump, or one of the 4 digestate pumps that we have available in the DLC. And then the last section is going to be specific to the injectors. We have 4 different injectors that are available in 5 different configuration options. So we're going to talk about each and every one of them, demonstrate the use of each and every one of them, and also talk about possibly some alternate use case scenarios for these injectors, like using them on just a contemporary slurry tank, just like we have right here. So let's go ahead and jump in. Part 1, hoses and hose reels. We can buy hoses in increments of 100 meters, and that's what we can see here. We have cartons of, or pallets of 100 meter hose, 200 meter hose, 300, 400, and 500 meter hose. We can also get our hoses in different colors. And in playing with pumps and hoses over the last week, I really do recommend buying hoses in different colors. I feel that it's going to make it easier for a player to know where one hose starts and another hose ends by having it in a different color. Elsewise, you're going to be trying to find the needle in a haystack, the connectors, the ends of the hoses, amongst a massive line of hose. Let's take a look at those in the shop. So if we go to our mods and DLCs, pumps and hoses pack, we're going to scroll over till we get to the umbilical hose, $1,950. That is going to be the 100 meter length, and then we can get it in various colors. We have black, orange, yellow, red, blue, green, brown, and gray. We get a 200 meter hose for $3,900, 300 meter hose for $5,850, and then a 400 meter hose for $7,800, and then finally a 500 meter hose for $9,750. Now, once you have the hose, you're also going to need to pick up at least one reel in order to transport the hose, unwind it, I should say, onto the field and wind it back up when you're done using it. There are 3 different hose reels that are a part of the Pumps and Hoses DLC. That is the H240, the DH240, and the FTH230. The H240 and the DH240 have configuration options where you can set them up to be attached to the front. So we have front lights, or we could set them up so we can attach them to the rear of our tractor. And in that case, we then set up the rear lights. The H240 is going to hold 1,300 meters worth of hose. 1.3 kilometers worth of hose is going to be able to reel it up onto this specific reel. The DH240 is basically a dual hose reel. It's going to be able to hold 1,700 meters worth of hose. And it's basically the H240 with a small reel on top. So the H240 holds 1.3 kilometers. So the DH240, the bottom reel is going to hold 1.3 kilometers worth of hose. And then the top reel is going to hold 400 meters worth of hose. And then we have the FTH230. The FTH230 is $28,500, and it has the distinction of not only having a hose reel, but it also has a small tank where it can hold 2,200 liters worth of digestate or slurry. Now, since this is both a hose reel and a small storage tank, we're not going to get quite the hose storage capability on this particular attachment. We're only going to be able to hold 400 meters worth of hose with that one. And here we have one set up. You can see that we've got multiple colors of hose on these reels. And now that we have an understanding of the hoses and the reels, well, how do we get the hoses on the reels? It's pretty straightforward. We're just going to drive up to a reel and we're going to get a pop-up R to start the hose transfer to the reel. So we're going to hit R and presto, there you go. Now, when we are done using the hose, if we want to take it off the reel to store it, that's easy enough done with the L key, and it's going to spawn it back out as a pallet. So again, R is going to load hose on the reel, where L is going to unload hose off the reel into a pallet. So this configuration, I put the hose reel on the front because it has front lights. Here I have the H240 set up with the front lights, and then the DH240 set up with the rear lights, and I've kind of have this Kloss tractor acting as kind of my hose dispensing vehicle. And I wanted to demonstrate how we're going to unwind our hose. The next little bit can be a little confusing, and I want to be real slow and thorough with this. To unwind your hose so that we can then use it for our injection, what we're going to do is we need to make sure that our reel is set to the unwinding state. Okay, so we're going to change that or toggle that with the Z key. Right now you may see up in the F1 menu, it says change to unwinding. I'm going to hit Z. If it says change to unwinding, it means that it's currently set to winding state. And now that I have hit Z, you can see now that the option says Z, change to winding, and we have a new option of Y, start unwinding. Okay, so if we are set to the wrong mode, and then we hit Y, it says attach umbilical hose first. All right, that's not very clear, right? It's not very clear what that means. So Z to change to unwinding state, and Y then to start unwinding. And here we are. Now we are unwinding our hose. Typically we would reverse to unwind our hose. And there is a really nice animation on the unwinding. You can see how that's working there. And if you look close, you can see that we do indeed have another hose underneath this one. And we're just going to progress by unwinding the hose here until we have completely unwound it. Now we have completely unwound the hose. There we go. Now, if we were to want to unwind from the rear, well, we would want to toggle to the rear. And then let's say I want to unwind from the top reel. I would unfold the top reel. I have to change to unwinding again. And then I would hit Y. And now I would drive to unwind that hose. Pretty straightforward, right? And then once our hose has been unwound, we're going to talk about how do we connect one hose to another. So we connect one hose to another with the use of a hose wrench. And the hose wrench is a hand tool. So you're going to buy it once, and then you're going to have it. Let's get down here to where the... two hoses connect. And this is why I suggested, like I said, they use hose of different colors. So it's easier to find where one hose ends and another hose starts. So if we go to our shop, pumps and hoses, and we're going to scroll all the way to the end, we have the wrench. $100. You can only buy one of them. Once you have it, you're going to toggle it, just like you would any other hand tool. For PC players, that is with the mouse wheel. We're going to click to attach. Now this one, the two hoses were a little bit too far apart. So we have to click to bring one. And now that we have both of them together, we can click, and now they're attached. We can click again, and now they're detached. So connecting the two hoses is pretty straightforward. It's just getting between them, clicking. If they don't connect, that means that one hose is likely too close to another hose, and you're just going to need to kind of drag it closer. Now, with respect to, let's say our job is now done. We have completely applied fertilizer to the field, and we're now ready to reel our hoses back up. We need to come through and we need to disconnect each and every hose. We cannot reel a hose if it is connected to another hose or pump. So if we have, let's say, 3 hoses all connected together, we need to disconnect all the hoses from each other, as well as from the pump and from the injector. And only after we do that will we be able to reel them back up. Let's leave this one connected, and I'll demonstrate what happens if you forget to disconnect one of them. So to reel a hose up, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to come up here, and we're going to get left shift Q to attach the hose to the reel. Now, we need to change to our winding state. So we need to hit Z to change to our winding state. And now that we have hit Z for winding, we can hit Y. But notice it says detach umbilical hose first. What? That just attached it, right? Now, what it means is you've got 2 hoses connected. At least 2 hoses connected. So let's go over here and disconnect this. Now they're disconnected. Now we can get in here and we can start our winding. And we have a really neat animation for our winding. And it's going to wind up our hose onto the reel. And we can slowly reverse to, aid in the whole winding process. Now this is going to take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut to right before we are done winding the rest of the hose. Okay, so this hose is basically now wound onto the reel. If we were to wind the other hose up, let's say onto this reel, what we have to do is we have to left shift Q. So we have to connect the hose to our reel again, and then we can hit Y. And now we are winding this hose up onto the rear hose reel. And it will tell you if, for whatever reason, you try to connect a hose to a reel that doesn't have enough capacity, it will tell you, hey, there's not enough capacity for this hose to fit. So you'll then have to try to put the hose on a different reel. But there you go. That is the basics with respect to buying hose, loading hose onto the reel for the first time, then unwinding hose for use, and then once you are completely done using it, how you wind the hose back up. In the next section, we're going to be talking about the various pumps and attaching hoses to the pumps, and then basically how we would possibly use each and every pump. Part 2 of the video, we're going to talk about the pumps that are available in the Pumps and Hoses DLC. Specifically, there are 6 different pumps. We have an air compressor, we have a small water pump, and then we have 4 injector pumps. They're going to be used to send digestate down the hose to our injectors. Let's go ahead and take a look at them in the shop. We're going to go to Mods and DLCs, Pumps and Hoses pack. We have the AC-115. This is an air compressor. This is going to be used to pump compressed air through your hoses when you're done using them in order to clear them out. So there is a mechanic within the Pumps and Hoses DLC that your hoses can become clogged over time. We're going to use the air compressor to clear those clogs with compressed air. We also have a small water pump. Water pump is $10,750 to buy, and the water pump is going to be used to water down, to thin the mixture of the digestate that we're pumping through the hose. By use of using water, we're thinning everything down. We're making it easier on the pumps, and as such, maintenance on those pumps will be reduced. So overall, our ongoing operating costs will be lower if we make use of water during the pumping process. Now, this water pump does not have any other use. So you will not be able to use this water pump in order to pump water from, let's say, a creek or a pond or a lake or some other body of water into a water tank. We will not be able to use this water pump to water our animals. The only purpose of this water pump is to put water into our digestate pumps that are then going to send water down the line. We then have 4 injector. We then have 4 injector pumps. These injector pumps are the PU100, the PU300, the JC450, and the PW121. The PU100 is the smallest of the 4 pumps. It's $20,000, $500 to buy. It's going to require a 160 horsepower tractor to operate, and it's going to be able to pump approximately 300 meters worth of line. There are no configuration options on this, and as you can see, we do need to attach this to the 3-point hitch of a tractor. The PU300 has a 200 horsepower requirement, has the ability to pump a kilometer's worth of hose, or 1,000 meters, and also has the ability to store 2,800 liters worth of water in a small storage tank. On top of that, we have a 100 meter hose reel that we can also put a little bit of hose on this particular pump. Again, it's going to require a tractor in order to operate. We have the JC450. This pump and storage tank combination is going to hold 49,000 liters worth of inputs. That is going to be a combination of 45,000 liters worth of digestate and 4,000 liters worth of water. It's going to have the ability to pump 700 meters in distance, and it's going to also require a 200 horsepower tractor to operate. Now, this one does have a configuration option. Specifically, we can change ever so slightly the tire configuration from standard to standard 2. And as you can see, it's just a slight change in the diameter of the tire and then of the tire tread. The final pump is the PW121. This is the most expensive and the most versatile pump of the mix. This is going to have the capability of pumping 1.5 kilometers or 1,500 meters overall. That is over half of a standard map in distance. It's going to have the ability to store digestate and or water 200 horsepower tractor to operate, and it's going to be able to store up to 12,200 liters worth of liquid manure. Now, this comes with several configuration options, one of which is to add a platform to the back. More on that in a little bit. We also have the choice of Trelleborg tires, BKT tires, Michelin tires, Midas tires, or Vertestein tires. We can get it with a single capacity of liquid manure, or we can add the ability to store water. If we add the ability to store water, then this will have a capacity of 3,200 liters worth of liquid manure and 9,000 liters worth of water. Now, with this configuration, clearly this is going to be used as a pump, and we're going to be bringing other tankers to this to overload onto this pump, because 3,200 liters worth of liquid manure is not going to last very long. The last configuration options we have is the reel. We can add a reel to the back for hose storage. We can add an air compressor to the back. And remember, we talked about the air compressor is used to clear out lines. Or we could add a reel and air compressor to the back. So now we're have an air compressor. We can have additional storage for some hose. We also have a mixed tank of water and liquid manure in here. And we have a platform for which we can store the small water pump. Let's go ahead and see how that mechanic works. We've got our platform. We've got our water pump. Let's go ahead and jump in the tractor. We need to unfold and open the platform up. So we're going to hit X to unfold. We're going to N to open the door. We're going to use our Mahindra to then reverse or back our pump into the platform. Sadly, we can't move the pump by itself. Really wish we could enter the pump and drive it around like we can belts and augers. So we're going to then disconnect. And you'll see it moved a little bit there because it is basically being detected in auto, kind of snapping itself into the platform. And at this point, we can close the cover and fold it back up. And now we'll be able to transport this to the field. And we're going to be able to then use it to pump digestate and, if configured, water to our injector. Now, as configured, this is set to only hold liquid manure. I will not be able to use the water pump on this configuration. Okay, this configuration is only good if it is set to store both water and liquid manure. If you have it set to only store liquid manure, you cannot use the water pump. The water pump can only be used on pumps that have the ability of also storing water. So that also excludes it from being able to be used on the PW100 because it has no ability to store water. So we can use the water pump on the PW300, the JC450, and the PW121, but only in this configuration. So as we move up to our hose, which I've already laid out, we're going to hit left shift Q to connect our hose to our pump. We take a look at our F1 menu, we cannot turn our pump on yet. And the reason we can't turn our pump on yet is because we have to have all of the hoses connected from the pump all the way to our injector. Now, I'm only using a single hose for this demonstration, but if we had multiple hoses laid out, we would have to go and connect each of those hoses to themselves, and then we would finally come and connect our final hose connection to our injector, and now we would have the ability of turning on our pump. In fact, we're going to do that right here in a moment. I'm going to unfold our injector. We're going to talk about each of these injectors in more detail in the next section of the video. And you can see we don't have the pump running. A little warning there because we have to come over here now And we can activate the pump by hitting B. We hear the pump turn on. We hear our tractor rev up. We are now basically sending digestate down the hose. To our injector, and as we drive, you can see we are now applying digestate to our field. Let's go take a look at the next pump. That's going to be the tank right here. So this has the ability to store water. We're just going to pull up to a water trigger. We're going to add some water to this mix. This has the ability of storing 4,000 liters worth of water. Also has the ability to store digestate. So we're going to fill this with digestate. Once again, as we move up to our hose, we're going to get the indicator to connect. Left shift Q. We're going to connect our hose then to our pump. We're also going to lower the tank with V. Sorry, we need to lower our tank first. Apparently, excuse me. Now that it's sitting down on the ground, we can connect our hose. Just like the other pump, we can't turn our pump on until we have made all of the hose connections. Let's go ahead and do that. And now we can activate our pump with B. And you can see that we are now pumping water. And if we sit here, we're losing water. We're pumping water through the system. Water is coming out of somewhere, right? Ever so slowly, but we are pumping water. And digestate. We lower this down. And off we go. Okay. So that is the JC450. The next pump we're going to take a look at is the PU300. But before we get up there, we're going to go ahead and connect our hose here. Lower things down. Of course, we get our warning that make sure you have connected your pump. And we're going to use the PU300 in order to pump digestate directly out of this tank. We're going to connect that. And we're going to turn our pump on. And just like we saw with the other pump, we are now pumping water through the system. Our water capacity is going down. And what we can do is we can use our water pump here. And we can activate our water pump. And now our water pump is pumping water into the PU300. So now if we jump in here, you can see we are now at a full 2,800 liters worth of water. Because the water pump is replacing water at the same rate that we are using it. And if we come down here, we're then going to be able to drive along. And this particular injector is also a cultivator. And we are now fertilizing and cultivating our ground. Now, the last pump I want to demonstrate is the PU100. And in this demonstration, we have the small PU100 connected to our tractor. I have another tractor set up here with a slurry tanker full of digestate. And we're going to basically pump digestate from this tanker to our injector. Remember, the PU100 is not going to be able to be used with the water pump because it has no water storage capability. We're going to attach our hose. We're going to jump in our pump. We're going to attach that hose. We're going to start our tractor. We're going to activate our pump. Let's go ahead and jump in here. You can see we have 21,000 liters worth of digestate in this tank. So we are applying our product. And if we jump back in our digestate tank, we should see that we have less digestate. It's a miracle, everybody. It's a miracle. We have 21,000 liters. We are indeed fertilized. So guys, that is basically a breakdown of how we use the various pumps to pump digestate from either a storage tank at the biogas plant, from a trailer, or from either the JC750 or the PW121. Did I have those right? The JC450 and the PW121. Of which we can then also overload into, right? So we have the JC450. It holds 45,000 liters worth of digestate. That's not going to do a large field. But what we can do is we can have someone or have a hired helper running the drag line, putting digestate on the field, and then we can run trailers to and from the tank in order to top it off and keep it going. And now the final part of the video, we're going to talk about the injectors. There are 4 different injectors, but one of them has 2 different configurations, and all 4 of these injectors can be used 2 different ways. So let's take a look at them in the shop. Mods and DLCs, pumps and hoses pack. Once again, we have the SP8040, $39,800. This thing's only going to require 70 horsepower, but it's heavy, 2.1 tons, an 8-meter working width, and 9 mile per hour working speed. Now this one can come in 2 different configurations. The 8040 SS is already configured to use the dragline setup. It has a dragline connector right here that is going to trail behind the injector. You see that arm located right here. It is $67,600 configured with that dragline connector already configured. Now we can go to the 8040. You notice the connector is now gone. The 8040 is significantly cheaper at $39,800. The 8040 will require the dragline injector to be added to this. It is an optional component. We're going to take a look at that next. But in this exact configuration, this injector can be used with a standard slurry tanker. And we're going to demonstrate that here in a moment. But if we go here to tools, slurry tanks, we're going to be able to connect the 8040 to any injector tank like the VT130. It has the right connector here on the back. Or, for example, the Fieldmaster 20. It has the right connector on the back. Okay? Back to pumps and hoses. We have the HS5100. This is the dragline hose connector. Attach the tool carrier to the tractor first to be able to attach tools. Okay? So this is not cheap. $45,400. Okay? So you have to use this in addition to any of the other injectors in order for all this to work. Or you get the 8040 SS with that component already basically built in. Okay? So it's cheaper to get the 8040 SS because it's already built in at $27,800 versus the $45,500 to configure the 8040 without it and then use the HS5100. The HS5100 itself requires 50 horsepower to operate and it's 1.4 tons. So a lot of this stuff is very heavy. And while you don't require a huge amount of horsepower, a small horsepower tractor could be easily overwhelmed with respect to its weight to where you would need something on the front like a hose carrier and some hose to balance out the heavy weight of these injectors. We have the SPC 1230, $58,500, 70 horsepower to operate, 12 meter working width, 10 mile per hour. So it's a little bit wider and faster than the 8040 and 8040 SS. This does not have the option to configure it with the hose line connector, so we will have to marry it with the 5100. So you got to combine these two costs if you're going to use that. Then we have the SP12260. This is going to require 80 horsepower to operate, 12 meter working width once again, 9 mile per hour working speed. And just like the SP1230, it's going to require the 5100 in order to connect to it to be useful. But as we will soon demonstrate, we can connect this to a standard slurry tanker and use it in more contemporary slurry injection. Then we have the BS900, $45,600. Now this one requires 100 horsepower to operate, 9 meter working width, and 9 miles per hour. Why does this one require more horsepower? Well, because this is a cultivator. This will cultivate your soil and provide additional nitrogen or fertilization through the digestate injection. This will, just like all the other ones we talked about, will require the 5100 if you're going to use it with the dragline equipment, or you can connect it to a standard slurry tank, and that's what we want to demonstrate right now. Let's go ahead and connect that to one of these. There you go. And once we connect to it, we can unfold it. We can bring it out to the field and apply our digestate just as we would pre-pumps and hoses. There you go. And we can connect any of these 4 to this slurry tanker without any issue whatsoever. I think we'll just connect one more just to kind of drive home that point a little bit. There you go. Now, in order to use the injectors with the drag line equipment, we're going to have to connect this tool carrier. And now that we've connected the tool carrier, we need to attach it to one of these injectors. So the process that we're going to go through with respect to doing that is we have to first unfold the tool carrier. Then once the tool carrier is unfolded, we're going to back the tool carrier arm through the injector, right through the center. If you're slightly off center, it will have a collision. So you want to make sure you are on the center. And then we're going to hit connect. And now that we have connected these two together, we can fold our tool carrier back up. And it is now ready for use. And to use it, as we kind of demonstrated in part 2 when we were talking about the pumps, we would come up here and we would unfold the tool carrier, X. We would attach the umbilical hose, left shift Q. We would then unfold our applicator. We lower the applicator with Y. We have to toggle back to our carrying tool. We have to lower it. And then once we do that, if our pump was operational, we would be cultivating and fertilizing at the same time. There you go. And that is pretty much how it all works. So let me just go and completely reset all of this and do a little bit of time lapse and just kind of show you this whole thing working, how it is kind of intended to, from unwinding the hose, setting up the pump, setting up our tool, and then kind of shuttling back and forth product to keep the pump running. So we've got our tractor set up here with the pump. We're going to go ahead and turn our pump on because I've went ahead and filled everything up. So we've got our pump turned on. You can see our water is now going down ever so slowly because we are pumping. I'm going to go ahead and turn on our water pump by entering it and turning it on by hitting B. So we are now actively pumping water. We'll validate that by getting back into our tractor. We can see we're at 4,000 liters worth of water. I went and connected my hose, or run my hoses down the field and back, basically. That should be more than enough to do this whole field. I'm going to lower our tool. We've already connected this hose. Then we're going to hire a helper. Off we go. Let's jump out of here. We'll see we are indeed fertilizing. See, our hose is dragging out. And if we come into our tractor, we'll see that while our water is not decreasing, our digestate is decreasing because, well, we are applying it on the field. And then we will be able to overload into this tanker as we need to, as we progress further down the field. Now, one thing that I really think is a really cool detail about the way all these lines work, and it makes sense once you think about it a little bit. The line will trail behind the implement to about halfway down the field, and then it will basically kind of just stall out there. Right? He's going to turn around, and now he's going to come back the other direction. And this part of the line is just going to back and forth constantly. But from this point onward, basically that hose and the yellow hose, it's only really going to be pulled as the worker is working down the field. So when we are all said and done, we'll kind of see this snake meandering hose coming down the middle of the field all the way to the bottom. And now that we are coming to the end of our field, I just need to clean up what the hired helper messed up here. But you can see how this thing has basically pulled the hose out about midway through. We're looping it all up back now because we're catching this little bit. But what we're going to do at this point is we are going to go through a cleaning process of clearing out our hose now that we have applied digestate to this entire field. Then the only thing left to do after that is to wrap our hose back up, and we are done with the project. So we're going to toggle over to our air compressor. And it says umbilical hose clogged by 0%. Well, that's great, right? That's exactly what we want to see. But we're still going to basically clean the umbilical hose. And what we would typically do to do that is we would turn on the air compressor. Now, the air compressor is already basically activated, and we already have air compression or air pressure in the air compressor. And the reason I know we have that is because this air valve right here. So you see this air valve, it's sitting at 21. So we basically have 21 pounds per square inch of air pressure built up in this air compressor. We're going to hit X to clean the umbilical hose. We heard a nice exit of air, and we can come in here and we can then basically disconnect everything and know that everything is good to go. So let's go ahead and just disconnect our umbilical. Left shift Q to do that. I'm going to attach this hose reel. Remember, we need to do a few things to pick up this hose. First thing we need to do is we need to attach the hose to the reel. We need to then change the hose reel to winding mode. So we have Z change to winding. Yes. Then we have to disconnect our hoses from each other. So we have a blue hose and a yellow hose connected. So I need to run down here, as we've already talked about, and we need to use our wrench, our hand tool wrench, to disconnect the hose. They are now disconnected. We need to also come back to our pump, and we need to disconnect the hose on the pump. Otherwise, when we get around to there, it's already disconnected. Okay. Otherwise, when we get around to trying to reel things in, we're going to run into problems. And now that it's all disconnected, we can hit Y. We can drive forward to slowly pull in the hose. So guys, that is going to do us for our pumps and hoses how-to video series. We've got a 3-part series down here. If you haven't seen part 1, we talk about building out a biogas plant. And in fact, we build out that very biogas plant over there that we have used for part of part 3. So I do encourage you to watch that if you are at all curious on the way the pumps and hoses BGA is put together and functions. In part 2, we talked about separated manure, how you separate it, what you can use separated manure for. And then obviously in part 3, this video, we talked about hoses and hose reels in part 1. We talked about the use of various pumps in part 2. And we talked about injecting digestate into the field in part 3. Let me know what your all's thoughts are on pumps and hoses as a DLC. I was skeptical when it first announced. I thought, man, that is an awful steep price for a DLC that doesn't include a map. And I thought to myself, man, I wonder what on earth could possibly merit such a large price tag. And now that we have seen pumps and hoses, now that we have been able to use pumps and hoses, I get a better understanding as to exactly how it has been able to basically command that price tag. And that is by having such a significant change in the gameplay. Building out the biogas plant is completely unique. Now, we have modular biogas plants in the mod hub, but the way this works, the way everything is additive together, we can really expand our biogas plant and we can really build out something that is a pretty big deal. Well, until next time, happy farming.